What's going on, Salt Strong Nation? Today we are going to be talking about how tide and wind affect pier fishing. Now, I did a lot of pier fishing growing up, but I never took those factors into account, and because of that, I would have some days where I caught fish and others where I didn't. But because I have recently dove back into it the past couple weeks, I've really tried to figure out what the most favorable conditions would be for pier fishing, and I'm going to share those with you guys today. So let's dive in. So the first of these factors that I want to cover is the tide. It is much easier to plan around than the wind is. Wind is super unpredictable. It can switch in several different directions at a moment's notice, while tide, we know, is always going to be going from low to high and high to low. Now, first, looking at high tide, you're going to have higher water levels that are going to allow bait fish to push closer to that shoreline. Generally, those predators are going to follow them because they're more comfortable. There's more water for them to be able to hold in. Generally, those predators that are on the beach don't like really shallow water. They don't want to get beached, but these higher water levels at high tide are going to allow them to push up closer to the shoreline and hunt. Now, what this does for you is it gives you ample opportunities to fish different stretches of the pier. Generally, there's going to be really big crowds at the end of the pier because there's always going to be action there at both high and low tide, but this allows you to find different areas that might not be as crowded and still catch fish, because again, those fish are going to be scattered along the length of the pier. Now, looking at low tide, what's going to happen is that water level is going to drop down, and it's going to pull those bait fish away from the shoreline, and those predators aren't going to want to be there at those lower water levels, and you're going to find a lot of predator fish at the first and second depth changes. Now, generally, you're going to have depth changes right after and before the sandbars, so there's going to be one generally at the middle of the pier, depending on where you live, and at the end of the pier. I really like fishing the end of the pier at low tide because there's a lot of different pelagic species that are going to run the ends, like mackerel. They're really easy species to catch, but if you're fishing the middle depth change at low tide, you're going to find drum, you're going to find pompano, you're going to find whiting. There's tons of different species you can catch there, but the migratory pelagics are going to be towards the end of the pier, and a lot of your bottom feeders, drums, things like that are going to be in the middle depth change. Now, to get into the second factor when it comes to pier fishing, and that is the wind direction. And there's a huge debate as to what the best wind direction is. Some people will argue for one direction, while others will completely oppose it. And again, those four directions are the north, south, east, and west. But really, depending on where you live, the time of year, which direction your pier faces, those winds can be different in how they can either improve your fishing or completely wreck it. Now, there are two universal terms that, regardless of where you live, are going to apply, and I'm going to show you how they would affect you in this video. Those are the onshore and the offshore winds. Now, to cover those in depth, the onshore winds are when wind blows from the ocean to the shore or the land, and then a offshore wind is when wind would blow from the land or the shoreline out to the ocean. So to look at the pros and cons of each of these winds, with onshore winds, it's a really great wind for trying to catch pelagic species like mackerel, because all of the bait that they hunt, the threadfin, glass minnows, cigar minnows, little bait fish like that hold really close to the top of the water column, and that first foot or two of the surface of the water are going to be really heavily influenced by the onshore wind, and they're going to get pushed closer to the shoreline, which brings them closer to the pier. And generally, if there's more bait closer to the pier, there's going to be more predators. So it sets up a really good scenario to catch mackerel and other pelagic hunters like that. But I will say, with onshore winds, it's going to increase the chop, which is generally going to murk up the water, and it can be a little bit difficult to catch some of the bottom feeders that are looking for those crabs and the shrimp that are holding closer to the bottom, because the chop has now increased. Now, inversely, with a offshore wind, it's actually going to clean up the water. It's going to calm down the chop, so those bottom feeders like the drum, things like that, can actually feed a little bit easier. Unfortunately, what it's going to do is it's going to push all that bait out, so you generally won't have as much luck with pelagic. So there's pros and cons to each wind, and really, I would say it comes down to what species you want to target and adjusting it to what wind you have for that day. So guys, that is going to wrap it up for this video of breaking down exactly how tide and wind affects pier fishing. But if you'd like to see some real life examples showing you exactly where I'm fishing, how I'm fishing, and exactly what I'm using in some pretty extreme detail, probably more than you've ever seen, I highly encourage you to go check us out in the Insider community. The Salt Strong Insider Club is the one and only online platform that has courses that'll break down the fundamentals of inshore fishing. It'll show you local reports from your area, give you fishing forecasts, and it'll even guarantee that you catch more fish, or we will give you your Insider Club subscription free. Plus, with all the discounts you'll be getting on fishing tackle that you're probably already buying, the membership really pays for itself. So guys, what are you waiting for? I'm excited to see you in the Salt Strong Insider community soon, and I'll see you on the next video.
There's something about the water that'll give you peace, all by yourself or with your family. Live salt strong and and wet a line today.